Yeah, it's the York Sports Report show with Jason York. Look at these British kids having a good time, banging their skulls. Someone kick her out now, please. She's just repugnant. There we go, there's some kids having a good time listening to some rock and roll bands. It's the York Sports Report show with Jason York. Enjoy.
Thanks for coming back on the York Sports Report show. We've got a couple shows that we're going to try and upload, but we want to touch more on this series. We're 3 days away from this series starting to we're 3 days away from the start. Saturday, they're saying it's going to be at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in Chicago. Game 1 and 2 this year are in Chicago. Canucks do not get home ice this time. But we sort of touched on a few of the players and some of the scenarios that have to sort of unwind for either team to win. The guys like Chris Versteeg and Pavel Demitra have to show up. If Pavel Demitra shows up, the Canucks have a better chance. Guys like Chris Versteeg. Now, Chris Versteeg is famous for hanging on to the puck a tad bit too long. And you can see Joe Quenneville, sometimes Coach Q on the bench, just grinding when he watches Chris play. Chris is a very talented kid, but sometimes hangs on to that puck a little too much. I know there's some local media, or well, not local, but some guys at 670 The Score that just have this big love affair for Chris Versteeg, and I like Versteeg. I think he brings some pretty decent little sandpaper to the game. But he needs to play feistier. He needs to look for his teammates. If Chris does that, he'll get his opportunities, because Versteeg can flat out score. There's no doubt about it. That sort of goes. The bottom line is Demitra. Now let's switch players here. What I was going to say, that kind of goes for the same for Demitra. Demitra, they're two different players. Demitra is more sort of consciously thinking of other players in terms of his long passing. But Pavel Demitra definitely has to start bulging the twine more in this series against Chicago. It will be very interesting to see how Pavel Demitra plays in this series. 1 year older, does age sort of start to linger a little bit, because Pavel Demitra, yes, he had a great Olympic. After the Olympic break, he didn't have stellar killer numbers, but we started to see him just a little bit come near the end of the season, and some flashes in the LA series. The big thing too, though, in this series is going to be penalties. Chicago can't get in the box too often, because Vancouver, the Sedins, they will get out there and they will take care of business. I honestly think that the Sedins this year, just from that LA series, I think them finding that other level in terms of muscling their way through the grimy stuff and on the boards and in the corners. We've seen the Sedins in the corners. They're great. We all know what they can do. But the bottom line is that if you give the Sedins too many power play opportunities, they will actually start to make you crumble. And that's where Chicago, I think, in terms of smaller guys like Nicholas Dromelson and Brent Sopel, Brian Campbell doesn't want to hit. Brian Campbell does not want to get hit. And that's the advantage that the Canucks are going to have. And I would imagine that Coach Alain Vigneault already has a plan. Maybe he doesn't. I don't want to be rude or mean or inconsiderate. But if I was the coach of the Vancouver Canucks, I would be going after Brian Campbell immediately. Same thing, that being said, though, for the Chicago Blackhawks. The Canucks right now have 5 defensemen, more or less, kind of 6. And you know that Alberts or Rome will sort of find their way in this series, maybe. Who knows? We all know Alberts took like 26 minutes in penalties in the LA series. That's a lot of minutes. That's a lot of manpower in the bench. Well, in the box. You don't need your defenseman taking penalties. That's a big no-no, and especially this time of the season. But Chicago can't take stupid penalties either. Coach Quenneville did mention something about composure. And I hope to some point that the Hawks don't get into their head that, Okay, we sort of need to play like a gentleman-like game like Detroit played with us last year. Listen, when Detroit needs to bang, they'll bang. When Detroit needs to muck it up, guys like Holmstrom, they'll do that, okay? They've got their sort of unique finesse ways to get under people's skin. Chicago's is a sandpaper-like mentality team. They're aggressive, they're hardworking, their forward-checking style is pretty decent, and they wreak havoc for goaltenders in front of them. You got Big Buck, you got Ben Eager, you got Versteeg, who's just, he can stir the pot, pretty decent. And then you got Troy Brouwer, you've got Andrew Ladd, guys like that. I don't want this nice guy composure. I don't want that sort of gentleman-like composure. I want hard-nosed Chicago Blackhawk hockey. So guys like Ladd and Brouwer and Bufflin, they have to crash that net. They have to take care of business. It will be interesting to see who goes in the sin bin more in this series, because I think ultimately if Chicago gets if they get the opportunity to get the power plays more often than Vancouver, Chicago is going to make Vancouver pay for it. Vancouver's guys such as O'Brien and Alberts and whomever's on D, they've got to stay out of the sin bin. Mason Raymond could be another difference maker for the Vancouver Canucks now. You've got all this speed that comes up and down the wing. He's hard in forward checking because he's got that speed. He's able to get in down low very, very efficiently, and he utilizes his speed exceptionally well. That being said, if that guy can keep it going in terms of the wheels, but also start putting some pucks in the net. Mason Raymond is somewhat of a creative player. He's not extremely creative, and same thing with Ryan Kessler. Ryan Kessler has a great set of wheels. They're not the most extremely talented, skilled players. Ryan Kessler's gotten better on the one-on-one situations, but now he's going up against. I mean, hey, let's don't, forget about Jack Johnson and Drew Doughty. They had phenomenal series, I thought, and those were pretty tough guys to play against. But Seabrook and Keith, I think, are just. I mean, you can't really say who's better than Drew Doughty. Drew Doughty, hands down, might be the best defenseman right now in the league, minus out of the playoffs. But Drew Doughty is an exceptional defenseman. Kevin Bieksa, on the other hand, too, has to stay tough. He needs to bring that barbaric animal feel to his game. I really liked what he did against Simmons in the LA series. I mean, he was going to take care of them right there. There was a couple times in different games where Kevin Bieksa brought that sandpaper, I'm going to punch you in the face type look, and that's what he needs to do the Hawks, and that's what he needs to do against the Hawks, pardon me. If he doesn't bring that to the table, the Hawks are going to have their way with Roberto Luongo. This is going to come down to protecting goalies. I really firmly believe this is going to come down to protecting their goalies, what goalie's hot, and this is going to come down to special teams and defense. Hands down, I just can't see. Alex Burrows as well has to pick it up. Yeah, he got that empty netter against LA, but Alex Burrows does other little things around the ice. But if Alex Burrows starts scoring now, and you've got the Sedins, and you've got Samuelson, and now you've and if you can get Burrows or Kessler, one of those guys going, you got to deal with 4 or 5 guys that are scoring. And right now, Taves, Kane, Sharp, and Hossa, they're getting their points slowly. They started to slowly peck away and get their points in the Nashville series. So I think overall, Vancouver gets 4 or 5 guys going. This just shapes up to be an incredible series.
Jonathan Toews and his Chicago Blackhawk teammates will take on the Vancouver Canucks in Chicago Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada. There's Jonathan Toews making moves. There's Patrick Kane wheeling and dealing down the ice. Folks, buckle up. This is going to be one hell of a series. The Blackhawks against the Vancouver Canucks. Oh, Jenny. Oh, Jenny. Good Lord, you look good, baby.